It's controller time again, and today we're looking at the Nintendo 64, the console with possibly the most polarising controller in existence. And while there are various different opinions on this thing, I think we can all agree it's a little bit odd with its three-pronged design. There have been various attempts over the years to try and make it a little bit more user-friendly. For instance, the HoriPad back in the back at the time, which went for a more traditional two-pronged design. But there are a lot more options these days, including the Retro Fighters Brawler 64, which takes a much different approach than most of the N64 projects. Let's take a look at it and see how it fares. Inside the remarkably unassuming box, you'll receive a little quick start guide, a keyring depicting what we assume is the Retro Fighters mascot, a very basic black USB-C cable, the comically oversized wireless adapter, and the controller itself in a little bag. And here is the controller itself, up close and totally not in focus. There we go. So I kind of had to go for this very bright green colour because while there are, as there are traditionally for most third-party N64 controllers and accessories and stuff, it came in the various different varieties that this did, in the fantastic colours as they're called. And, well, this was the only one available when I bought mine. So we've got this Mountain Dew green one. Apparently this was the limited edition as well, which is a little bit odd. So yeah, on the front you've got all the buttons. You've got the stick, you've got the D-pad, turbo and clear buttons. You've got the start button, B and A, and the C buttons over here. And you've got L, R, and then both of these are the Z trigger, because if we compare to the original N64 controller, I mean, that's how they compare sort of size-wise. So roughly the same size. The handles are a bit more rounded on this one compared to the original. And the buttons, well, they are, you know, virtually the same size. Even the D-pad's pretty similar size. The stick is obviously totally different because this stick has been massively improved since 1996. And, well, yeah, I was just going to quickly show you the Z trigger back here. This has two because, well, the way you're holding it is it's kind of like an Xbox controller, or most other controllers these days. So you're holding it like that, and you've got your fingers on both at once. So these do the same thing, essentially. What else? Well, you'll notice that this is missing the N64 expansion slot. This is where you'll put your rumble pack, your controller packs, and various other things that go into the back of the controller. This does not have that, so straight off the bat you are not getting any rumble functionality with this whatsoever. Instead, you have to plug all your control packs into this. So this is the adapter that goes into the console and it sticks out like a sore thumb. You'll see that in a bit. And you will put your controller packs into this. So we'll try that out in a bit, and we'll see what works and what doesn't. But yeah, so that is the adapter. It's kind of massive out of necessity, really, because you do need the save functionality in some games. What else? Well, this is rechargeable, naturally, because it's wireless. So you can't put in the new AA batteries because, you know, it's the 2020s. Instead, it's got a USB-C charger, and there was a USB-C cable in the box, so you can charge it with basically anything. I don't know what exactly they recommend vis-a-vis voltage and stuff like that, but I guess any sort of charger you've got will work just fine with this. The battery life lasts a decent amount of time. The manufacturer claims that it lasts about 10 hours. I can't vouch for that in any particular way. However, I will say that I've been using it on and off for the past few weeks, and I've only had to charge it once when I first got it. So, you know, you're not going to have to charge it tons. If you are using it like every day, you'll probably have to stick it on charge a lot more often than I have. But I wasn't wanting for battery life, put it that way. It's not died on me yet. Now, just initial first impressions I want to give you before we get into any games. The buttons are kind of weird. So, now, the stick is quite good. It's got a sort of smooth rubberized top. It's got the whole octagonal gate, which I really do like in controllers. I think more controllers should have it. And yeah, it feels quite nice as a stick. I do prefer sort of a ridged finish. Most controllers do tend to have some sort of texture to the stick. This one doesn't at all, so it's just smooth. It is very rubbery though, so you're not going to be sliding about on it. The buttons are unusual because typically most controllers, like the old 8-bit do here, the buttons are sort of domed and they are smooth, and that's the case with almost every controller I've ever tried. These are they're kind of like Parma Violets. There's sort of a matte texture and there's the flat on top, so it's a really weird feeling. I don't necessarily hate it, but I also have to wonder why they've done that when the domed buttons, I personally feel, are so much better. You might get along great with these, but I was personally not a big fan. And the D-pad, you know, it's not going to set the world on fire, but it's better than a lot that I've used. It's a good size. You don't push well, you kind of do push the whole thing in. Actually, that's a bit unusual. But yeah, you're not going to have any complaints about this D-pad, and the amount that you're going to be using it on the N64. I mean, it doesn't matter too much, the D-pad really. So when you first turn it on, it does flash to say that it's pairing, and then when it has paired, you've got a solid light on here, and you've also got a solid light on the adapter. It's really simple to do. You just plug the thing in and you press the start button and you're straight in. It doesn't faff about at all. Unfortunately, I only have this one because it's not cheap, and so I am unable to test pairing multiple controllers. However, according to the manual, it's as simple as just pairing them one by one. I'm not sure if you need a separate adapter for each controller. They would all come with one each, but I don't know if the N64 would necessarily know. Since it's in one slot, I don't know if it would know if it's a second controller, if that makes sense. So, enough about the look of the thing and the size of the thing and the shape of the thing. Let's play the darn thing. Right then, I guess it's time to try this beggar out. So, like we said before, we've got the controller itself, which should be fully charged still, and we've got this. Now, this is quite chunky, especially if you consider other wireless controller adapters. I don't have any others to hand, which was very clever of me. But they tend to be quite small and quite lean. The only bigger one that I've seen belongs to the Retro Fighters Defender, which you can't actually see from here. And that is the size of a PS2 connector, so it kind of makes sense. This, well, I mean, the N64 connector has always been kind of chunky, but that just takes it to a whole new level. Anyway, let's get it plugged in. And reset the old system. We'll press start on here. There we go. So it's connected now. I did have to hold the start button in to get it to sync. But now that it's connected, we should... I mean, the game has recognised that there's a controller connected now. And away we go. I've got loads of save games here. I'm going to have to hold it up to the camera, which is kind of awkward, but that's fine, that's fine. So, this is literally my first time using this controller, by the way. It's been a minute since I last played Mario 64. But you know what? First impressions positive. It's working as expected. It's not like I'm not missing timings and stuff, so that's good. The errors in gameplay are largely down to me. In fact, they're all down to me. What I'm saying is the controller doesn't seem to be at fault for any sort of... like, there's no trouble with the inputs or anything like that. Let's go down to... in fact, let's just keep it simple. Let's go... I was a bit confused there, because I was expecting there to be a right analog stick, and there is not a right analog stick. Well, that was well timed. Because of the low frame rate, the input lag isn't actually as big a deal in this game. Right, so what I wanted to try, if I can remember how to do it, then there we go. So it's suitable for getting that star early, for what that's worth. And I mean, what more do you want? If it works with Mario 64, you've already got the best N64 game there is. Oh, that could have gone better. Oh, that could have gone worse. Whee! Ah, well, there we go. That's what you get for not looking where you're going. I will just say, I was actually expecting this to be quite a bit worse than it is. So, I mentioned previously that, well, if we compare to the lovely Tribute 64, This has a GameCube style joystick, and that to me is gold standard. You know, you've got the nice grip, but it still feels, you know, it still feels smooth. It's not uncomfortable. The N64 pad has a similar stick, but it's plastic. It's not as comfortable, and of course, it's kind of grinds around a bit. Not best stick. This, it's not really similar to anything. It's most similar to a PS2 stick actually, because it's sort of this convex, rubbery. It's actually got quite a good grip to it. It's surprising, and it feels quite nice. It's smoother than I would like it. If it had a GameCube style stick, then that would be ideal, but it's not bad. It's not causing me any trouble, and I don't find that my thumb's slipping off the stick. I have had that with certain other sticks, and it's not really happening here, which is good. That's what we want. However, I do think that because it's not got a texture to it, because it's just this rubberized finish, I think it does run the risk of wearing down after a while. Again, textured sticks aren't immune to that, of course. They do have the benefit that the texture tends to wear down a little bit less than just like a rubberized finish. I've actually got that trouble with my Xbox One pad at the moment. That's starting to wear down, and I've had various other controllers where the rubberized textured finish is, it's just, there's barely anything left to it after lots and lots of use. So yeah, I do suspect that after quite a bit of use, this will wear down. It'll just be smooth plastic, and then it will be virtually unusable. But with all that being said, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Now, in terms of feel, it feels quite nice in the hand. It's quite big, it's quite smooth. It's actually surprisingly smooth. When I've, other controllers have a bit more of a texture to them, this is quite smooth. It's not got like a texture back or anything, unlike the 8-bit do controller, for instance. It's just smooth, but it actually feels really nice. It's very ergonomic. You'll notice it's not got, like the Tribute and the N64 pad as well, these have got sort of tapered handles. This one doesn't, so it's just kind of rounded at the bottom, which again is kind of similar to, well, it's most similar to the Xbox pad, I think. Either way, it's rounded bottom. You don't often see that in controllers, but it actually feels quite nice. I think it's just because the controls are a bit more spread out, but I cannot substantiate that with a single fact, so you'll just have to trust me on that. In terms of button layout, again, really nice. I think the D-pad isn't like miles away, so it's not going to be a problem if you want to use it, but it's also, unlike the N64 pad, that one's there, so it's a bit easier to use. However, there are so few games that even use the D-pad on the N64 that it's not really going to be a big problem. I think it's fine where it is. It's Xbox 360 style, so if you're used to that, then this is probably good for you. Again, comparing to Tribute, the D-pad's there, and it's still reachable, but you kind of have to hold your controller funny, and it's really tiny. Yeah, it's a bit rubbish D-pad, really. I'm not really sure what else I can add at this juncture. I think actually it's probably worth noting that the buttons are quite flat. They've got a very flat profile to them. I didn't really notice while I was playing it. You can feel it, and it's fine. I think I do prefer the rounded, more glossy buttons. I mean, you can't really tell from this video, but they are a bit more rounded on the 64, and of course the Tribute pad, which is very similar to the 64. They're a bit more like, what are they like, these ones? What can I compare them to? You see, most controllers do have rounded buttons, so it's unusual that they've gone for the sort of flat, almost Parma Violet-esque controllers on this one. So I don't know what I can reasonably compare it to. Whatever, the flat, and they're sort of a matte finish rather than the whole glossy thing that you usually get with controllers. Overall, feels really nice. Also, notice that the buttons here are just buttons. They're not triggers. They're not pretending to be analog. They are just, buttons, which is really good for this sort of game where they're not analog. What we should do is try it with a different game, one that ideally uses the D-pad a little bit, so we can try that out because it does actually feel quite nice. And yeah, just see what else we can try with this. So here's the thing, I have been using this on and off, and when I say on and off I mean a little bit over the past week, and I'm ready to give my verdict on it. You know, talk about the good and the bad and all that, and give my final thoughts, and then I'm going to test it with a few more games, just because that's what I do around here. What I would like to do before that is to do the super scientific input lag test, and to do that, I've got my EverDrive 64 here, and I'm going to do... Actually, I've got the 60 frames Super Mario 64 on here, but that's not what we want. We want Super Mario World. Yeah, this is running on an emulator on the EverDrive, which is quite incredible in itself, but here's the thing. So if I use the Tribute 64 as a control, because that is a wired controller, you can tell, and the reason for this is because there is going to be no input lag whatsoever with this one. So I'll just grab a game of Super Mario World, and I will demonstrate to the best of my ability with the, again, super scientific test, that there is no input lag with this. Oh my goodness. The buttons are weird on the SNES emulator. You have to use the C buttons to do anything. To try and demonstrate that there is no input lag, or at least I can't discern any with this, as I shouldn't be able to. Now, let's do that same thing, but with the Brawler. Now, remember that this is wireless, so there is undoubtedly going to be a degree of input lag. We are expecting this, but how much is there? Again, based on my entirely scientific test. Ready? Now, it's pretty good, isn't it? It's not perfect, because it's not going to be, it's wireless. Ooh, crowns. I was not prepared for that. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't think this is an especially fair test, because you have to remember that most N64 games, like Super Mario 64 that we played previously, they run at a very crappy frame rate. I believe Ocarina of Time, in fact, that runs at like 20 FPS. And as a result, you know, you may disagree. I'm sure some of you will disagree with this, but for the N64, input lag doesn't actually then matter all that much, because the games are just they're kind of unresponsive by nature, right? And they're always going to feel unresponsive no matter what sort of controller you use. So what I'm saying is the input lag is less of an issue at lower frame rates, just by virtue of, you know, it's the nature of the beast. But here's the thing, I can play Super Mario World reasonably well on a system that's not really designed for. I think this is a good test. It's possibly the best way to test input lag on an N64 without, you know, having all those cool lag testers and stuff that Bob from Retro RGB has. This is the best I can do with the materials that I have. We're going to do this one, which is probably wildly out of date, but hey, this is this channel after all. Yeah, this one does run at a much smoother frame rate, so we're just gonna do training mode just to demonstrate once again the whole lag situation. Poly Yoshi. Now, I must admit, I'm not very good at Smash 64. Once again, I mean, it's hard to say because you have to factor in the animations, but to me, that is a very good input time. It's not going to massively affect your game. If you are especially sensitive to input lag, you will notice it. I notice it, but it's not bad enough to be a problem, as far as I'm concerned. And despite the fact that I do notice it, I also recognise that I'm probably a bit more lenient to input lag than many people are. So, you know, make of that what you will. For casual gameplay, it's going to be totally fine. You're going to have no problem with it. Again, as far as I'm concerned. And this is... you have to remember as well, this is under ideal circumstances. You know, I'm sat right in front of the console. I've not really got any interference between this and the receiver. I'm running it on a CRT display, so there's no... it's not faffing about with the image, basically. We're getting a raw output from the system. So, with all that in mind, the input lag is fine as far as I'm concerned. And again, casual gameplay, it's not going to matter, because if you're using an LCD or any other widescreen telly and you've not got an upscaler, you're not even going to be bothered, I don't think, because you're already experiencing a bit of input lag anyway. So, we talked about the adapter briefly, and it is... well, it's a heck of a chunker compared to the actual the original's connector. This is surprisingly big, but there is a reason for it. You see, the N64 controller had this on the back, which you could connect. For example, well, that's a rumble pack. It makes the thing extremely unwieldy, but it does make it rumble, which is quite good. It had expansion capabilities, and they needed to address that with their wireless controller. Now, naturally, you can't use a rumble pack because all you'd be rumbling is this thing, and that would be no use to anybody. It'd be interesting to see if it still works, but I don't think it will. Maybe I'll give it a try. But one thing you can use is one of these. These are memory packs, so these are effectively the old memory card like on the PlayStation. You can save game data to them, they're pretty good. We'll use this nice translucent green one, whose box has amazingly survived all these years. Oh, crimes, that's fallen on the ground. So there we go. I've no idea if the battery inside is still good, probably not, but we can still give it a try. I've got a game in mind for this that I know will take a memory pack. Also, it came with a label. That's quite good, isn't it? So you could label your card so you knew which game it was for. There you go. Incredible. Side note, you might be familiar with this game, but you might only be familiar with the PlayStation version. If you are, you might be thinking, what a crappy game. This version is like 50 times better. And it's still not a good game, but it's a lot better than the PS1 version. Now, it's saying no controller pack found. I'm guessing that's probably because this has a bad battery. Let's try it with a different one. Recheck, please. Oh, there we go, look. We've got a Space Invaders game file on here, that's pretty good. But yeah, that works quite well. I'm trying to remember which was the best team on this. Insert rumble packs now. Yeah, you know what? Okay, just for the sake of entertainment and science, we're going to try the rumble pack. It's got some batteries in, it's got some baked bean batteries, Rip Wilco. Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. Is it going to just make the adapter rumble? Is it going to do anything at all? Look at this, look how fast it is compared to the PS1 version. Slight tangent, I know, but where are the other tanks actually? Oh, there's one. Oh. I probably want to be using the gun and not the special super zapper. Ah! I mean, one could argue that it's a bit too fast and it's very zoomed in, so you can't really tell what you're doing, but... Shoot! 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 Just stand there and take it. What a great idea. Oh my goodness, it is actually... Hold on. I needed to have tried this with a more sensible game. So... The rumble pack is actually rumbling. So it kind of makes sense that it would. But it also is hilarious that it does. It just makes it wobble about so much in the... Oh, that is just special. Well, rumble pack support, there you go. So there is a feature of this controller that I haven't tried out yet. It's the turbo function. So you've got turbo and clear. And, well, we'll just start a game here. Right, so to get turbo working, we hold the button. No, we don't. I need to look at the manual, don't I? I thought it would be easy to work out. So, you hold the button and then press the button that you want to turbo, and then it does turbo forever then, as long as you're holding it. And then, if you do the same with the clear button, then it clears it. Okay, that makes sense. I have to wonder what the applications are. The only time that I've wanted to use turbo, I think ever, is when playing Gallagher 88 on the PC Engine, and that's got the turbo buttons on the or the turbo switch on the controller, so that's, you know, totally legit. And there are a few other games that I think it will be valuable. Probably the original Gallagher. I can't think of many games off the top of my head, particularly for the N64, where you have to press a button repeatedly, it's actually not super common. At least not to my knowledge. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, of course. But yeah, I mean that's how it works. If you really want to jump over and over with Mario, then that's the way to do it. So that was the Brawler 64, and well, I've spoken about it at length. I've told you about my personal feelings about it. Told you how I think it feels in the hand and how it feels to play. I've told you as much as I can about the input lag, and I think I've covered what I can about it, as far as my personal experiences go. So all I can say is, if this looks like a good controller to you, then I would say go for it. It's not a bad controller, that's the thing. I wouldn't say it's my favourite, and I personally, if it was between this and, say, another type of controller, like my beloved Tribute 64, I would probably pick another controller. It's got certain aspects that I'm not a big fan of. But they may be aspects that you like. You might like the shape, you might like the stick style, you might like the fact that the buttons are kind of weird and Palmer Violet-y. There is a lot to like about this controller, and if it looks like a controller that you would get a lot out of, then yeah, I would definitely say go for it. It's wireless. Wireless is really useful. I do like wireless because, I mean, look at this entrail. So yeah, that's the Brawler 64. My verdict is not the best, but still good. So stick around if you want to see me try more games with it, and well, I am kind of limited because it is an N64 only controller. One thing I will say actually is that I have not made the best decision here because there is also a Bluetooth version of this controller that you can use with PC, Switch, pretty much anything that can take a Bluetooth connection. So you might be better served to get the Switch version. I think it's called the NSO version for Nintendo Switch Online, and getting yourself a blue retro adapter for the N64. Now that's going to run you a lot more money. I think you'd probably be paying kind of double than what you'd be paying just for the controller. When I bought this, it cost £40 here in the UK, and that was for the wireless version. As I say, the wired versions I think are about 30 quid, or near enough. And I believe the NSO version is the same price. It might be a little bit more expensive. A blue retro adapter will run you, from the same shop, it'll run you about 25-30 quid. So keep that in mind. It does open up possibilities in case you want to use it on your Switch or on your PC for emulation or whatever, or even on your Mister. Hey, it matches. Because there is now N64 support on the Mister, so that could be an option too. It's up to you, it depends on what you're going to be using it for. For my purposes, I just wanted it for the N64, so, you know, that worked for me. I can't really give a verdict because controllers are very personal things, so if it looks like something that you like, then that's great. If it doesn't look like your kind of thing, then that's great too. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later if you choose to stick around. Otherwise, I'll see you for the next one. Alright, now we've got the whole verdict thing out of the way, I just want to try a few more different games because, for me, part of the use of a controller is the layout, and N64 games, typically, they're designed to be played on a controller that looks like this, a very specific controller design. So, it does kind of change things when you play games that, on a controller like this, it can make things feel a bit different. So we're going to try a few different games that hopefully will give us an idea of what it feels like to use this thing with a variety of different games. That's the whole point. And again, we've got the Tribute here as a control if we need it, but the whole point is to just fool around with this and just see what happens, yeah? Let's first of all try Star Fox, because I know how that plays. So much plot, we can't skip any of it either. Alright. Again, I'm not perceiving much in the way of the old input lag here. It feels really responsive. For some reason this feels more responsive than than anything else I've played. Now, there is a slightly confusing matter. One of the things you can do in Star Fox 64 is, of course, the barrel roll, which our friend Peppy is so keen to tell us about. And here's the thing, on the original controller it expects the Z button to be on your left finger, so it makes sense. Oh dear, I should have sped up to get through that. That's not what I want. I didn't know you could do a cockpit view. How long's that been there? Well, we don't really want that. As I was saying, it expects the Z button to be at your left finger, so it makes sense. If you press it with your left finger, then your craft, your R-wing, will roll to the left. Sensible, right? If you press the Z button by your right finger, guess what happens? Your R-wing rolls to the left. So, I don't know really what you can do about that other than not have the right Z button. But I prefer using it on the right when it comes to Mario 64, and I don't know, it feels more natural to me. Maybe it's just because I'm used to Crash Bandicoot and the whole R1 to crouch. I don't know, it makes more sense, it feels better. But it's something to bear in mind, and that will be the case with most games. Everything else feels fine in this, it's just something to consider. But yeah, it's no notes really with Star Fox 64, feels fine. I am curious about Episode 1 Racer. I would like to know if it is as smooth as it is on PC. Oh, it's an expansion pack enhanced, this one, way! That's what we like. I'm assuming it's A to accelerate. Oh dear! Yeah, I would not be happy playing this version, for sure. How... What even are the controls on this version? Oh god, they make no sense! They make absolutely no sense. Don't worry about temperature, it's all good. It's all good. That's what these things are made for. You have to use the C buttons to tilt your craft. That is dire. You've got some beautiful, very useful shoulder buttons that you could use, you know, but that's used for repair. That's terrible. It's absolutely abysmal. And C up, well, I mean, C up does a sensible thing of doing the camera, and the game gets a lot smoother if you put it in bumper view, because of course it does. Yeah, that's pretty dire actually. But you know, it's still the same absolutely fantastic racing game that it always was. Possibly the best thing to ever come out of Star Wars, and I know that's a big statement, but screw it, I'm gonna say it. One thing I would like to try, you see, there's a game on here, it's called GoldenEye, spoilers, and it's got a very particular control scheme. Now, if you're familiar with it on the original controller, the old N64 pad, you see, GoldenEye was the game to kind of pioneer the whole the way we play modern FPSs on console. It's quite interesting, because while the N64 obviously didn't have two sticks, you held it like this, right? Use that to move, use that to aim. Pretty genius, right? And the trigger to shoot. So it kind of means that you cannot play GoldenEye with that particular control scheme with any other controller than this one. This is the ideal controller for GoldenEye, which is a pain because, you know, the stick is crap. And you even would struggle with the Tribute because, you know, the D-pad's there. Gosh, the stick feels quite loose on that, actually, compared to that one. But what of the old Brawler? Well, that's got the same kind of issue in that the D-pad's there, so, I mean, to get that control scheme you would have to hold your controller like this, and that's obviously not going to work. But I just want to try it, because there are a few different ways of playing it. I want to give it a try with... gosh, have I got cheat options? That's quite good. So if I believe... Where are we? That's our weapons. Controller. So we can change our control style somehow. Yeah, so this is more of a like a Doom style control scheme where the stick just turns. So it's not ideal, but you are sort of getting the twin stick ish controls because... Oh, hi. Shoot this jerk. Because your C buttons are now look up and down. You don't really need to do it a great deal in this game because it is an early FPS, an early console FPS particularly, so they're not expecting you to look up and down loads. I mean, you have still got the shoulder button aiming, so it's fine. And of course, it does feel a bit more like your more modern FPSs because you have got the triggers to shoot. You can shoot with your left hand if you really want to. You can do it Counter-Strike style. But I don't know. It's not quite that that classic control scheme. Yeah, I just wanted to try that and just see what the controls would be like. So the short point: you can't do it like that, but you can do it in the more traditional way, as is the style of the FPS at the time. I think I've pretty much run the gamut of games, so I'll probably leave it there. The trouble is, I'm not super familiar with the N64 library in regards to games that have unusual control schemes, so I will be happy to take suggestions. If you want me to try a particular game with this controller, then I'd be happy to do so. And I'll probably stick it on the Stockhouse channel. That's my extra spare bits channel if you want to go check that out. Yeah, that's kind of that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the extended gameplay tests, and I'll see you all for the next one.